Let's talk about probably the single biggest leverage point in terms of lowering your stress levels and one of the biggest leverage points from increasing your company's multiple. I can argue your company doesn't even need to grow. If it's got a robust, stable profits, you can sell that business. But what you would sell it for, John, would be emaciated radically if the company's dependent upon you, especially if it's got your name above the door, right? And that's not true. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because, of course, the Disney company, there's all kinds of companies that have got the person's name above the door and they're still were able to be exited or realize great value. But if it's operationally dependent upon you, you're in a world of hurt. So let's talk about it. Like step one, I've broken it into 3 steps and I just want to facilitate you thinking about it because people make it too complicated. I go, okay, start with your role. Let's define what we're trying to extract ourselves from. So what is your role? What's the job title? You might say it's MD, it's director. Well, it'll be slight different variations inside of it, and you might have a couple of job titles. Okay, well, you're the MD, but you're also the marketing director. Okay, I want to just be clear on that first, and then I'll move on to say, what are the critical tasks that I do inside of that role? Operationally, Billy, what are the jobs that I'm actually bloody doing? And there's a whole list of things. Like, start writing them down. Some of them are only occasional, but of course, if you've never set up structured process for your team, and you haven't really defined the tasks, what you'll find is, Lindsay, you will do every task, Heidi, yourself. You're going to do every single task that hasn't been delegated to somebody else. So if somebody else hasn't been delegated that task, it's not in their job description, anything that you've not thought of is going to end up on your plate if you're the MD. And by the way, Darren, it's also true because, and kind of appropriate if you think about it, if there's any problems that are outside of the status quo, they bubble up the org chart so somebody more senior deals with it. Okay, but then if you deal with it and put it out, but never put any process or system or thought or training into who's going to do that going forward, every time a problem like that comes up, it's going to land on your plate. And of course, normally you deal with a crisis and then you're so pissed off with dealing with the crisis that you don't want to take the extra time. And it does take extra time, Matthew, to train somebody up to document it so that it can be handed off in the future. And then, of course, you stay in the perpetual cycle of dealing with the same crap every bloody year, all right? Well, there's a price to be paid. Whatever you want, there's going to be a price to be paid. Kidlin's Law, I think it's called. A problem, once it's written down, clearly is already half solved. All right. So what are the critical tasks that you do? And then beyond that, I'd even say, what are the things that currently only you can do? Because there's certain things in your company, Johan, that you do, but actually, truthfully, there's somebody else in your company that can absolutely do that task if you just with a little bit of handoff and clarity of direction. But then equally, Kat, there are some things in your company that you do that actually nobody else can do. Well, we've got a little sticking point. Because if it's beyond the capacity or the realistic training capacity of people around us, or they haven't got the available time because they're doing other tasks, okay, crap, that's a problem you need to sit with, Emma. Is it an external hire? Is it an outsourcing thing? Is it a divide and conquer? Well, actually, no person can do these 7 tasks, but I've got 7 people that can do one of these tasks each, and I'm going to split it across. So one of my clients who exited his business because effectively he took his MD title and he went, you know what, I'm going to just, rather than hire an MD, which he tried and it failed, not that that can't be done, Ash, but he tried it and it didn't work and it was quite painful. In the end, he went, you know what, I'm going to just split my job into the tasks and hand it out across the management team. And it worked quite well, Rob. In fact, very well, because then he was radically able to reduce his hours and effectively exit his business and just retain the profits. Okay, and actually got more profitable while he did that. Because the free time that he had left over, Heidi, he allocated to more strategic projects, the bigger contracts. All right, great. And he was working less and he quite enjoyed that bit. So he got rid of the other tasks that previously were critical tasks, but he'd never delegated them to his team. Step 1, what's your brief job summary? What are the critical tasks that make up that job? And then which of those tasks at the moment only you can do? You couldn't hand it off easily even if you tried. All right, so changing tact. Here's the label that I've put for it. I've called it department heads. Now, I want to be clear. You don't need to do it this way, John. This is just a filter, a frame, a lens through which to think about it that you might find helpful. The way that I see business, Sam, is the 6 kind of key areas. Finance, legal, people, ops, sales, and marketing. And I kind of go, as per the model, Sonia referenced the level 4, the self-managing departments, I kind of going, at the end of the day, stuff bubbles up. When you've really got your stuff together, you've got somebody, I would argue, that's better than you in each of these areas. Which means that even though they may have other people underneath them in the org chart that are doing tasks, actually, if you've got any marketing person, So like in this business, the guy's called Chad. We worked together for 15 plus years. It's like if there is any question, any issue with marketing, anything needs doing, any idea needs brainstorming, all right, ultimately the buck stops with him. That's him. So who owns each of these 6 areas in your business? And I would imagine, James, for a lot of people in here, your name shows up under multiple sections. So that the only real question is, would you like it to be different? Now, don't get me wrong, if you're the MD and the director, ultimately you could argue that you're the name on all of it, and ultimately the final buck stops with you. But I kind of go, you know what, Chad will have a better, I trust Chad's answer is almost certainly going to be better than mine anyway. Hopefully you've got somebody from a financial side, and again, they may not be in-house, they might be an external accountant, whereas like, if it really comes down to it, they could answer any question, any tax inquiry, any element, and it's like, it's robust. The stuff's there, it's in place. There's somebody operationally can run things. All right, like Kevin and I have worked together 15 years. About 12 years ago, I had a serious accident and a brain injury, and I wasn't able to work for 4 months. And despite what Kevin tells you, or Kevin will tell you, that I'm still brain injured today. But to which my comment was, well, even me with half a brain was better than Kevin with a full brain. Anyway, so the point being, all right, you've got somebody that's the operational piece there, like absolutely knows all the systems, the process to keep operations running. Who is that for your business? Now, if you do that list and you realize that your name's on multiple, in multiple seats, Joe, then I'm like, okay, do you want it to be different? Like, if you don't, I'm good, but I'd rather you have the choice. Whereas, well, it could be done. It absolutely could be done by somebody, and somebody is skilled up. Now, they might sit in the second in command seat, David, until you choose to step down from that role. Or you might train them up and put them in that role now, and you just have a degree of oversight. And these things typically take time. They're not black and white. They're kind of analog. Like, it's a scale. Like, you turn it up, you turn it down, the level of competence. I'll break it into 2. So first of all, have a crack at putting the names. Put names in those 6 boxes. That should be very quick. Just take 60 seconds. And if you're struggling and it's just your own name 6 times, 6 times, who could, Andy, own that part of the business? It's useful insight. If you're kind of going, oh, yeah, God, I'm in these 2 boxes. Okay, well, which of those 2 boxes do you want to remove yourself from first? So it's either somebody in your existing team is going to either move over or get a more expanded role, or you're going to have an additional hire, which could be internal, as in an additional employee, but it could be a contractor as well. Okay, it depends on the context. Another good question came up over here while you're doing the exercise. Somebody said, oh, what's the definition of this area? Great question. Now, really, you could argue I've given you my definitions with the cheat sheet of the kind of, you think about the tasks and the scorecards and the things that fall inside of those areas on my cheat sheet is how I'm defining who's going to own, the person that owns that area will own the things that are on that cheat sheet list. But you may not define it the same way, and that's okay. Come on, people go, well, I want a sales and marketing, like a customer acquisition person. I'm good. I'm good if that's how you choose to divide it up, depending on your business. Some are so heavy that you need that to be 2 distinct roles. Other businesses, you go, no, it's very simple how this works, and we just need 1 person. It's not broken into 2. But our operations is so complex, that has 2 component parts. All right, and this is just a lens through which to think of departments. And this is I believe in Einstein's quote, Nigel, make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. Okay, this is as simple as possible, like the 80-20 rule is the way I see it. But if you want to change the definition of roles, I'm good. But I find if you then break it into 26 roles, it ceases to become helpful, because you say, oh, I've got all these people reporting in, and I haven't got this right department head for toilet roll changer. It doesn't work. Okay, if you go, I want a business that's self-managing, i.e. it's non-dependent upon me, so it's entirely exitable, then I'm going to say, effectively, I want somebody that's going to own each of these areas. I'm clear that I'm in these areas, I want to remove these areas. Okay, fine. You might start, Joe, with whichever area you're trying to remove yourself from. Okay, so I'll arbitrarily choose sales just because it's closest to me physically here. I kind of go, all right, I think with 3 different lenses. I kind of go, okay, scorecards. So I go, all right, how do I know if somebody in that role is doing a great job? How am I measuring? What are the kind of 3 KPIs that I'd measure? Okay, well, sales, okay, it's number of new customers acquired, it's the average transaction size, and it's the, I don't know, It could be customer acquisition cost might sit in sales as well. Okay, fine. Product A, product B, conversion rate of leads to customers. I don't know, but you go, right, okay, what are the most important 3 metrics? Not 33, Bill, what are the top 3? Training. What would the process and protocol be to onboard somebody into that role? Now, because one of you gents, and forgive me, I don't remember which of you it was, alluded to this earlier, I think it was yourself, talking about, oh yeah, there was somebody and they hired a bit optimistically and it was in the month of August. Well, the most common mistake when people are trying to remove themselves is they try and extract themselves way too quickly. So they go, right, I've hired this person, great. Why are they not doing a good job? And you'd be really unlucky if you actually hired somebody who could do the bloody job. But because you were so impatient to get out of there, you didn't give them a fighting chance. You basically ran in the opposite direction and then look back in 30 days and wonder why they're doing a shit job. Because you didn't tell them what to do. Okay. And especially when it's like, well, how long have you done this job for? And it's like 3 years. Right? And it's like, oh, how much insight did they get? Well, about, on the first day, I went through the processes. It's like, okay, let me know how that shit works out, right? It always takes a lot longer than you think. And that's back to the point about, if you build the systems to scale, it's painful. And so actually, one of the root emotional problems that will prevent you from exiting your business is you're too damn impatient. It's like, what's the military saying? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's like, okay, like if you try and get somebody to do something fast, just you wanting them to be up to speed quicker does not make it happen. You don't, well, either toilet train or teach to walk, choose your, you don't get to fast track that shit as much as you wish to. It's like, no, we're going to really start him. We're going to start him on the walker. How old is he? 3 days. It's like, it's not helpful. Like it's going to take time, and just you wishing that it would happen quicker does not speed up the process. All right. So being clear about what is a realistic time to transition through, and then giving you the Ricky example earlier. There's somebody that trebled his business in a financial year. He worked it into the plan. He went, I know from 10 years of experience that only 1 in 3 of my sales hires is going to make it long term. So great. I'm going to hire 3 times as many and cost that into it. And then, of course, he built the whole thing as to how to hire people on scale to make it efficient, right? So he wasn't paying recruiters for every person. He found a way to attract a large volume of leads and hired more people. So instead of paying a headhunter's fees, he would pay more salaries to be able to test them on the ground. Now, I'm not saying that is the strategy that will necessarily work for you, but he had the capacity, he had the workforce. He said, if I'm going to train 1 salesperson, I might as well train bloody 3, which, by the way, was an idea, power mastermind. I heard Ricky say that. I went, oh, that's interesting. And so the back of the room is, Eleanor, I was hiring this year. Well, what I actually did was I didn't use a recruiter. I advertised and I hired 3 people. I had 3 people, and, within Eleanor was, when I got to the short list of 3, she was probably the 3rd. I got the first one, yeah, really strong. Okay, we need a second one, second one, yeah. Okay, we need a 3rd one. And Eleanor was the 3rd. Now, I'm not saying necessarily in rank order, but that's the order that they kind of fell. If I just made the hire, I would have hired the first person. If I just made the choice, I would have the first person like, yeah, he's fucking great. Well, the first 2 didn't make it more than 30 days, 45 days. So I hired all 3 for a probation period. Didn't cut the mustard. So I'm glad I didn't go with my first reaction. I'm glad I built in contingency. And that's partly the skill of, well, I'll say it's training. You could say that was partly the recruiting process. And also, and Eleanor doesn't report to me, she reports to Chad. So Chad was uber diligent. Like the onboarding manual, which is the reason why he did it, not me, because I wouldn't have had this level of patience. I think it was 70, 80 pages long. Everything you could possibly want to know. And many things you wouldn't want to know. It's it was all there. And in addition to that, there was daily meetings for, I don't know how long it was, but a decent length of time. And then actually I wasn't happy. So I made him, when he dropped it to 2 times a week, I made him go back and say, no, you need to up the pace because it's not quite at the level that I want it to be or where I think we could be. I think you've pulled out this too soon. So I think you need to be clear about what this is. And I think most people grossly underestimate that, Sam, and they're not willing to pay the price. Oh, well, congratulations. You get stuck in the job. Yeah, hiring so far and good. Well, I think, so Self saying, look, I get how I can hire 3 salespeople, but I can't hire 3 people in logistics. That's probably not going to work. Well, my first pushback would be, would it not work? Or could it not work? I'd encourage you, before you dismiss it, just go, is there a way that it's possible? Right? Because my first instinct is well, if you're hiring 3 people, that costs a lot more money. And you're like, yeah, but if you don't, you lose so much time and the opportunity cost because you fire them, then you hire the next one, and then you fire them, and then you hire the 3rd one and go, oh, 3rd time lucky, yeah, great. A joke for me and you again, it's 3rd time round, we got it right, 3rd time. First time worked together, didn't work out, I left. Second time, we were working together at a different company. The second time, it didn't work out. You left. And then the third time, we're 10 years strong, mate. There you go. Third time's a charm. It might be you can hire them and you're just thinking that you can't. Or it might not be profitable to test it, but that might still make more sense than the alternative, than switch all your logistics or your 3PL stuff to another provider and then it doesn't work and then go again. But equally, it's not a bad answer to say, you know what, I'll just be really diligent and detailed before I switch over. Because I think a lot of people go, this is shit, so I'm going to move. Like somehow the shitness of this means that the next one's going to be better. Like that makes no sense to me. In fact, just for human value, while I've been here, and we've only been here half a day, I've had at least 3 people tell me specifically about how their industry is really shit and horrendous and nobody would want to be in their industry. And the last person who said it to me, I just said to them, I said, yep, it's definitely just your industry, 100%. Says every single person in this room. Goes, oh, you don't get the training business, oh, you don't get the property business, oh, guy, you don't get, I don't know, the electrical business, oh, you don't get the 3PL business, oh, you don't get children's homes, oh, you don't get e-commerce. Like, insert the market. Every industry has got some bits where you go, oh my God, I'd kill for that. And it's got things where you go, oh my God, that's absolutely awful. And now, so sometimes it's in the personality of the person. It's like, you're really unlucky, Matt, if you get yourself in an industry which is not aligned with your personality, because then you really, but there's some people, some private clients that I've got where I would not touch their business with a fucking barge pole. You could not pay me enough to want to go into that business. But they love it. They love it. And they're happy. Not to say that there's not problems, but it's because it's kind of predisposed that like that's how they want to go. There's plenty of people that would hate what I've got for a job. I absolutely love it. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. And despite what your observation is me, grass is always greener. Number of mastermind meetings I've been in where somebody's telling a story and I'm like, oh, Claire's whinging about her business. I'm going, oh, I'd love to have your business. And yet Claire's looking at somebody else in the room going, oh, Emma, I'd kill to have your business. I can't believe you have that recurring contract or whatever, insert the blank. A lot of the problems sit in one area. And the reason why you've got those problems is because you've got stuck with the job that you don't want to do. And then the real irony is there's somebody out there that you could hire that would absolutely eat that stuff up. They would fucking love it. But you can't get your head around why they would do it for such a low amount of money. Because you never would. And that prevents you from even seeing it. But at the same time, some of you, even if you can find them and recruit them, they don't work out and you think it's that they're the problem when actually it's your onboarding, it's your training that was a bloody problem. Hire slow, fire fast. That concept is kind of a bit cute and I think it's applicable in a lot of circumstances. But if all of a sudden you start hiring and firing, it's like, you know, I gave the 3 accountant example earlier. It's kind of like, yeah, if you keep doing that, I'm kind of going, yeah, maybe it's not, maybe your recruiting's bad and you're hiring poor people. So your recruiting process is bad, but equally, maybe no, you're recruiting people that are perfectly adequate, but your onboarding is poor or too speedy. And there could be other options as well, like culturally it's toxic or whatever, right? So it's like, oh, shit, unless you deal with the real issue. And if it was easy, you would have all figured it out already. That's why we're here. Because if you don't think about it, it's not going to magically fall into place. Who in this room, by show of hands, I'm hoping I will get mass take up, I'm confident in this. Who in this room pays for a cleaner? So their home, they have a cleaner coming to their home to clean, okay? Majority of the room, okay? Great. Now, I kind of go, there's a joke in my family that I do nothing ever, like ever. And I'm like, yeah, 100% by design. I'm like, what? You want me to do the fucking cleaning? I'll be shit at it. Like, I'll take twice as long. I'll do a poorer job and I will bitch about it every second of the way. I'm like, there is nothing about that that's good, like at all. And then insert the blank. Like my kids, it's a running joke. The amount that we eat out is, I'm not even going to admit it, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But it's kind of like, well, I don't like cooking. My wife doesn't like cooking, right? It doesn't mean that we'll never cook, but I kind of going, you know what? Like if we're eating, and our local obsession is Wagamama, right? It's kind of like, if it's pretty healthy, it's whatever, it's close to us. And I'm like, yeah, don't care. I've earned the right to spend my money how I want to. Now, again, there's a bit of I'm saying it in a safe space, I hope. I don't talk or brag about it externally because it's not a brag. It's like, no, I've earned the fucking right to spend my money how I want to spend it. And I've designed it that way. I don't enjoy it, don't do it, want to do it, fine. So you've got to find your own little quirks. So it's funny, you're here talking about slides, and obviously as a trainer, there's a few trainers in this room. I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't done slides in 10 years and I've forgotten. And then when you forget, you go, oh yeah. And I used to absolutely hate it. And I don't think about it. I just talk to somebody and then the slides get produced and then I look at them and I go, I don't like that. Can you change it? That's how it goes. So I'm in favor of you shaping it for whatever it needs to be for you. So fully supportive of the outsourcing. And then the final one is the standard operating procedure. I'm like, okay, look, I think that 80% of the work is normally carried by 20% of the activities. So people go, I want to have an MD. Well, I'm not anti you hiring an MD, but I kind of go, in a lot of cases, you go, oh, actually, it's only 20% of your activities that are causing you 80% of the headaches. And actually, if you thought about what the process was for those and went through a little bit of pain of clarifying the process, it's infinitely easier to hand off. It's infinitely easier to hand off. All right, I'll tell you the story. Right, so even though I don't clean, I'm one of those weirdos that am obsessed about how you load the dishwasher, right? Yeah, are we on the same page? Right, you and me should talk, right? I don't get, how can you put the fucking dishing upside down? It just doesn't wash properly. This just makes no sense. But then somebody said to me once, I was like, well, have you ever articulated? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what? You shout occasionally when it's done wrong? He's like, well, yeah, that's basically the extent of my training. I was like, oh, and you're surprised that this hasn't magically produced the result that you want? And then this person who told me it has 6 kids. And she went, I've got, and then she showed me, she had SOPs for every household task, right? And I'm like, what the hell? And I was like, no, I'm horrified. I'm never doing that. And then I was like, oh no, there's a shortcut way. I'm like, can you send me that document? And she went, yeah, here you go. I was great. And then you're going to go, you stay stuck with, the kids can't load the dishwasher or the kids can't hang out their own washing because they hang it out and it all like, and then you go, great, you get stuck with the job. Congratulations, forever. And I'm like, well, I don't like that shit. And I'm like, okay, be clear what the training is, or in that case, it's like, literally, here is how you hang out clothes on a dryer, or here is how you load the dishwasher. It's not hard, but I kept bitching about it. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, just be clear. Is there any process? If you do a little bit of pain, you don't have to do it anymore. And it's like, oh yeah, but it's really annoying. It's like, yeah, okay. Or do you want to just keep bitching about this for the next 6 months? I'm like, okay, I'll bitch first and then I'll change my mind later. Is that all right? Yeah, fine. So what does it look like for your business? So my suggestion for you for this exercise is choose one of these areas. Choose one of these areas, the one that you most like to fire yourself from. And I think of whatever area you choose, think of it through those 3 lenses. Think of it through those 3 lenses. Okay, so scorecards, what are the KPIs, training, how would you train somebody, what's the length of time to train somebody, and then what are the key processes and how would you document? Most people won't want to do this shit, all right? And there'll be some other course in 5 years' time still wondering why they're operational in the business and it's still the same fucking size. So the first question was, does it discount the value of the business if the employee is really attached to you? Is that? Yeah. Great. So is that gonna affect his value? 100%. 100%. In fact, Harry, can I tell that story from yesterday? So Harry, before he had the company that he's got now, and he was working for another business, they were going through the process of exiting, and Harry wasn't owner, he worked there when he was an employee, but he was in a kind of senior sales role. He went to leave and they went, no, don't leave. And the private equity, I think it was, that was buying the business was going to buy it for 11 million. And when they saw that Harry, and he had all the contacts and he was like the senior sales, had all the relationships, they knocked down the price from 11 to 9 million, right? So they knocked 2 million off the value of the company because one member of the team left. Now, it was an important member of the team, but that's exactly why the price was knocked down, because they went, look, you're walking on all these relationships, historic relationships, contract, whatever, are going to walk with that person. So just as a side corollary, just because it made me smile. So what do you think the owners of this business, before they, who were trying to sell the company, what do you think they did to try and persuade Harry to stay? Offer him some money, right? So great. If it's going to cost you 2 million quid if Harry leaves, how much might you offer him to stay? Well, 50 quid was close to 5 grand. Not unsurprisingly, Harry was just like, yeah, no, I'm all right. I'll leave, right? So he left and it cost him 2 million quid. Mental, but there you go. Now, by the way, I like to use real stories because it's far more sticky in your memory. You far more like to remember the point than me just giving you facts and figures. But you could also say, you've got to give a pinch of salt because you don't know the context of the size of the company that Harry's working for, or you don't know any of the details. But I will say, assuming you are not going for like a budget, cheap, quick sale, and we're talking about millions of pounds of large sums of money, anybody with a brain, so somebody that's got the ability to write a check that large, will have a due diligence process. And part of that process is absolutely going to be rooted in the team. One of the first things they're going to look at is, okay, who is your team? How long have they worked for you for? Right, so who are your team? What are their job roles? What are their job descriptions? Can we see their contracts? How much are they getting paid? And how long have they worked for you for? Because if everything else was equal, parallel universe, company A, company B, company A, all the staff have been there 1 year. Company B, all the staff have been there 10 years. Which company is more valuable, A or B? Whether all the staff have been there 1 year or all the staff have been there 10 years? 10 years. Why? It's stability. You see it as less risky. And that'll even be true if you go, oh yeah, but we have just hired somebody that was the marketing person at Google or, whatever. It's like, yeah, you hired him 2 months ago. She's still on probation. Doesn't mean shit. It just means you've added a big chunk to my payroll. I don't even know if they're going to do a good job. So yeah, and you do need to think about that. Now, it's also possible people go, yeah, but what if I was selling to a competitor and he's already got a team and he's actually just trying to buy the book of business and he's not even going to keep the staff members? Well, then clearly, he's not going to care because he's probably just going to buy the assets and bin off the staff. But generically, you're kind of going, if you're selling the business as is, somebody's going to want it to be as robust as possible. They want to grow the thing, but if you want to grow the thing, the first thing you need to make sure happens is it doesn't go to shit. Okay, and if the staff are leaving with you, which, by the way, the other example I gave you is this business. This business makes a very large amount of money in profit, extremely good. But the problem is, if you bought this business from me and I just left tomorrow, it's going to cause significant problems for that future stream of earnings. Which means, unless you were naive and wrote a monstrously big check, it's like, well, it's not anybody with a brain. It's not going to work. They're going to look and go, oh, yeah, the key member of staff is leaving. So it erodes the value. And that's why oftentimes people bake in long-term incentives. So I gave that flippant comment about Harry, but if I was there, it's like, God, I don't know how much I would have paid, but I would have probably given him, well into 6 figures. And I would have bridged it as earnouts, bonuses over a period of time to obligate him to stay there for a couple of years probably. Because if he got 200 grand, again, it's all hypothetical because I'm not saying that he would have done it back then, but the number would have got chunky. Why? Because it's literally costing me 2 million. So I'm prepared to part with a good chunk of that as long as I can do it in a way that's, legal and, congruent and all that kind of stuff. So all things being equal, acquirers typically will look at employees more favorably than they'll look at contractors. That's not always true, but as a rule of thumb, I'd say that is true because they seem to be more secure, more stable, even though that's not necessarily the way. Chad, who's worked with me for 15 years, he's a contractor and been a contractor for 15 years, but he's American and it just didn't work with the logistics and the taxes. It was like, okay, it's just been that way. That's the way that it's been. But then you got the advantage of if this company was being sold, it's like, well, yeah, he's been here for 15 years. Like stability, he's not going anywhere. But all things being equal, I would choose employee. And this is where it becomes multifaceted because they're going to go, well, why don't you have the employee? And if your answer was, well, because the VAs or the Filipino designer, it's much cheaper and more cost effective. I'm going to go, yeah, okay, cool. Well, can you make it a longer term contract? Can you employ them? And you might look at it that way because the term VA is, I don't want to say it's derogatory, but it almost implies temporary. And you could go, well, what if we had the same person, but we gave them a more robust job title? Right? You know what I mean? And it's not that it's all smoke and mirrors, but it's be aware that if you're trying to sell your house, you clean your house before people come around to view it. Now, it's the same house, but the fact is the presentation matters from that perception. And I know people that very obviously do this. They look at their competitors and they find out that they're outsourcing their lead gen, their marketing, their whatever. They find out which suppliers they're using and then they go to those people. And I've even seen it done when they not just go to those people and go, well, actually, we're getting the same raw materials. I've seen it when they've done the reverse. They go, oh, let's go and use Jim's company and let's pay them a premium to shut Jim out. I'm always a little bit loath. I'm giving you my opinion, and there's definitely, probably for every opinion I've given here, you could find somebody that would give you a different. And some of them are diametrically opposed, right? So a bit like, some go, oh yeah, I outsource VAs, flexible, I can get rid of them at no notice, they're really cheap. But then the downside is you don't have the perceived stability. So in the short term, it's good for profits, but not. So I do not like long-term notice periods because normally it just ends up kicking the employer in the soft and fleshy bits, when it comes time to let them go. However, it is relatively low on the list, but it is an indicator of how robust, the strength of the contract with them. If I've got a contract with somebody, basically has got no non-compete clauses and I've got to give them 5 minutes notice before they leave, etc. It's kind of like, it's not on that lens of the strength of that contract. The relationship with that employee or contractor is not strong. It's not robust. So having a more robust contract, which includes lengthier notice periods in both directions, lends itself to a story of this relationship is more stable. But I'm not sure that's helpful if they've only worked for you for 3 months anyway. You know what I mean? I think technically, Chad's notice period is the same as now as when we started, which is 30 days notice. Now, I think in practice, it's probably overdue a review, because in practice, I kind of go, no, we'd be far more generous both ways. Actually, like Kevin, he left me and went and worked elsewhere for a few years in the middle of that 15-year stint. They always think the grass is greener, Jim. They always think the grass is greener. They all come crawling. Anyway, but, you know, if I was trying to sell the business, I'd arguably go, well, yeah, all right, I need to strengthen up that contract because it was written on a sheet of toilet paper 15 years ago when we thought of this brilliant idea. Like, it was never done properly. It was like a template, one-pager contract. Really, what you're trying to sell is you're trying to sell the fact that your team is stable and robust. Because if they're buying a team that's stable and robust and the business is solid, they want that to continue. And if the key engineers leave, your business is screwed.